They told me I was too old to need a house this big, that I should move into a small condo and let them enjoy the family home I worked my bones for. But that night, as I walked past the glowing windows and saw my son raising a toast in my living room, with my daughter-in-law spinning the crystal glass I bought decades ago, something inside me snapped. I realized I wasn't just losing a home. I was being erased. My name is Marjorie. I am 68 years old, a retired nurse, a widow, and for most of my life, a quiet giver. The house I live in is not all wood and brick. I wear my shoes until they fall apart. I bake every birthday cake on a shoestring. When my husband died 20 years ago, I vowed to raise our 2 children, David and Elena, with love, dignity, and every ounce of strength I had left. I gave David my late husband's watch on his graduation day. I gave Elena the necklace I dreamed of wearing at my own wedding. I gave and gave and gave, believing that someday the love would return and multiply. But you probably know where this is going. It all started with a small comment. You don't have to keep the whole house to yourself. Think of us. We have children. We are the future. At first, I laughed it off. After all, what's wrong with children wanting comfort? But over time, the words became sharper, more persistent. My daughter-in-law, Tessa, with her carefully painted nails and her sweet voice, would often say, "It's selfish to hold on to something so big when we're cramped in a tiny apartment. Don't you think so?" Selfish. The words were like vinegar stabbing into an open wound. I brushed them off, but deep inside, a seed of insecurity had sprouted. But I still held out hope. I thought if I kept quiet, if I loved them, they would never betray me. But then, family dinner came. Dinner still haunted me. The roast chicken was barely sliced when David cleared his throat. "Mom, we've talked," Elena agrees. "It's time for you to think about downsizing. Sell the place, move closer to the city. We'll take care of the house." Keep it in the family, I remember the fork shaking in my hand. "Take care of the house," he said, as if I were a fragile vase to be placed on a shelf. Then Tessa added with her signature smile, "Fair enough. We need this space more than you do. You'll understand." Did he feel the anger rising in his chest? Because I was burning too. But I swallowed. I smiled. I said I'd think about it. That night, when the dishes were done and the house was quiet, I sat at the kitchen table and traced the cracks in the wood. My husband had built this table himself. His fingerprints were still imprinted on the wood. And yet my children spoke up. If you were me, would you resist? Or would you give in just to keep the peace? The next morning, I discovered something strange. My house keys were missing. My daughter-in-law had been playing with them the night before, turning them in her hands, laughing. It was a small detail, but it sent a chill down my spine. And that's when I realized something more than just being asked. Something else was being taken. What I didn't know was how far they would go, or if I had a card up my sleeve, a card they never expected. Before diving deeper into the full story, let me pause for a moment. If this is your first time here, remember to subscribe to Twist Story and hit the notification bell. Here, you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and those breathtaking twists that remind us justice comes in unexpected ways. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below. Maybe the next story will echo your own family memories. The days after that dinner felt different. The air in my own home grew heavier, as though the walls themselves knew what was coming. David began calling more often, not to ask how I was, but to check in about my plans. "Have you thought more about selling, Mom? Real estate's hot right now. You'd be smart to let go before the market dips." He said, "Let go," as if I were clinging to a broken toy. And Tessa, she no longer hid her disdain. One Sunday, I caught her glancing around my living room like a realtor during an open house. These curtains, so outdated. We'd definitely switch them for something modern. She said it right in front of me as though I no longer existed. It only escalated from there. At Elena's birthday gathering, when the family came over, David raised a glass to family and to moving forward. Then he looked directly at me as though the toast were a warning. "Mom, you'll be happier when you don't have to worry about this old place anymore." The room laughed politely. I smiled weakly, but my insides twisted. You see, it's one thing for strangers to dismiss you. It's another when your own flesh and blood looks at your life's work and sees only square footage. Have you ever been in that moment where you realize love has turned into entitlement? The breaking point came one rainy Thursday. I was on my way back from the grocery store when I noticed the porch light flicker. Strange. I hadn't turned it on that morning. When I opened the door, I froze. There was a faint smell of wine, 2 glasses in the sink, and the faint echo of laughter still hanging in the air as if my house had just entertained guests I never invited. I stood there, heart pounding, gripping the bag of apples so tightly one fell and rolled across the floor. I knew someone had been here. And then I noticed my keys. Not the originals, but a duplicate. Someone had made a copy. The realization cut through me like ice water. A week later, confirmation came. Mrs. Carter, my neighbor of 30 years, called. "Marjorie, honey, I didn't want to worry you, but I saw David and Tessa here last night. Lights were on. Looked like they were hosting some friends." My throat closed. Hosting? In my house? While I was away visiting Elena. When I confronted David, he didn't even deny it. Instead, he sneered, "Mom, relax. It's going to be ours anyway. Why not start making memories now? Ours anyway. Do you feel the slap in those words?" Because I felt it burn across my face. From that day, the cruelty sharpened. Tessa called me stubborn when I refused to hand over papers. "You're old, Marjorie. You should be grateful we're even offering to take care of the place. Most kids wouldn't bother ungrateful. That was the knife. Ungrateful after I had given every piece of myself to raise them. And then came the dinner ambush. They invited me out to what I thought was a family meal. Instead, I found myself sitting across from a lawyer, a smug young man who slid a stack of documents toward me. David leaned back in his chair. "Mom, all you need to do is sign. Transfer the deed now. It saves everyone trouble later. Trouble later." As if my death was already penciled in on his calendar. My hands shook as I pushed the papers back. "No." The restaurant seemed to go silent. Tessa's smile cracked. "You're being selfish. Do you want us to struggle while you sit alone in that big, empty house? What kind of mother does that? What kind of mother?" The words were venom. And I'll admit, part of me crumbled right then. Because isn't that the curse of motherhood? To always question if you've done enough? But beneath the shame, a spark flickered. A spark that whispered, "Not this time." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the faded calendar on the wall. I thought of my husband's last words before he passed. Protect what we built. Don't let anyone take it from you. And I realized David and Tessa weren't just asking, they were planning. The missing keys, the sudden visits, the lawyer. It was all moving toward one outcome, but they didn't know me as well as they thought. Because 20 years ago, after my husband died, I had made arrangements. Quiet ones. Legal ones. Ones even my children didn't know about. And maybe, just maybe, those decisions would save me now. The question was, should I reveal my hand early, or should I let them walk further into their own trap? If it were you, what would you do? Would you confront them now, or wait until the knife was fully raised before pulling out your shield? As I sat there in the dim kitchen light, I knew one thing for certain. My children believed they had already won, and nothing would satisfy me more than proving them wrong. The night after that humiliating dinner, I sat in the dark living room, the old clock ticking on the mantel. My children thought they had me cornered, but they had no idea that I'd been planning for a storm like this for years. You see, when my husband died, the grief nearly drowned me, but I knew grief could cloud judgment. That's why, before the fog of sorrow consumed me, I met with our family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, a meticulous, silver-haired man who insisted I think beyond today. Marjorie, he had said back then, never assume loyalty. Protect yourself. Protect what you and your husband built. If you want this house to remain yours until your last breath, we'll make it ironclad. And we did. Hidden deep in a locked drawer upstairs was a living trust drawn up 20 years ago that ensured the house could not be sold, transferred, or tampered with without my explicit consent. Not even my children could override it. Of course, I had never told them. Why would I? At the time, I couldn't imagine my own blood turning against me. But now, I realize that silence might just be my sharpest weapon. Still, doubt gnawed at me. What if the law wasn't enough? What if charm and manipulation could twist things in court, make me look senile, incapable? I had seen it happen to patients in the nursing home where I once worked, families scheming to declare an elder unfit just to grab their assets. I couldn't let that be me. So I began documenting, quietly, patiently. Every time David called, pressuring me, I wrote it down. Every time Tessa mocked my age, I noted the words exactly as she said them. I even bought a small recorder, slipping it into my apron pocket when they came to visit. You're old, Mom. Just sign. You'll thank us later. Think of the kids. We deserve better. Each sentence burned into the tape like fire. Evidence. My shield, piece by piece. Then, one afternoon, Mrs. Carter knocked on my door again. I don't mean to intrude, but they were here again last night. I saw Tessa holding a set of keys. The confirmation hit me like a punch, but instead of fear, I felt a strange calm, because this time, I was ready. A few days later, David showed up unannounced. He strolled into the kitchen, no knock, no apology. He just sat down and said, "Mom, we need to move faster. Tessa and I found a buyer. We'll get a great price. You can take the condo we picked for you, my condo, my house, my life," as if I were nothing but an object to relocate. I poured him tea, my hand steady. "David, dear, do you really think this house will ever belong to you?" He froze, the cup halfway to his lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled gently, but my heart thundered. "Just remember, your father and I built this place with more than money. And not all of our choices were written on the surface." His eyes narrowed. Suspicion flickered, but he brushed it off. He thought I was bluffing. Let him. That evening, I pulled out the living trust. The crisp pages still smelled faintly of ink. Reading, Mr. Harrison's precise wording, I felt a rush of strength. No one could touch my home without my consent, not legally, not morally. But I didn't plan to show this just yet. Number. I wanted them to keep walking further into their own greed until their betrayal was undeniable, until revealing the truth would be nothing short of devastating. A week later, the chance came. David and Tessa held what they called a planning dinner. They invited me, Elena, and even some extended relatives. I thought it was just a family gathering until I saw the contracts on the table again. They wanted witnesses this time, pressure from all sides. Tessa stood, her glass raised. "Tonight we make it official. Mom is finally doing the right thing. She's signing the house over to us." The room clapped politely. My ears rang. And then David slid the pen toward me. "Come on, Mom. Don't make a scene." I looked at the pen, at the eager faces, at the house deed on the table. For a moment, silence. Then I spoke. "Do you know what your father told me before he died?" I said slowly, voice carrying across the room. David frowned. "What does that matter?" He said, protect what we built. Don't let anyone take it. And then I pushed the papers back toward him. No. Gasps rippled through the room. Tessa's smile cracked into a scowl. You old fool, she hissed. You'll regret this. You're not as untouchable as you think. But as her voice rose, I felt calmer than ever, because in my heart I knew the real regret was coming for them. That night, back in my room, I locked the trust papers in my drawer again. But now I added something new, the voice recordings, neatly labeled. If they wanted war, I would give them war, but on my terms. And for the first time in months, I slept soundly, because this wasn't just survival anymore. This was strategy. The storm broke on a Saturday evening. I had just finished setting the table for myself when my phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Carter, my faithful neighbor. Marjorie, they're here again. Lights on, cars in the driveway. I thought you should know my chest tightened, but this time there was no panic, only resolve. I slipped the small recorder into my pocket, grabbed my coat, and walked across the street. Through the window I saw them, David, Tessa, and 3 of their friends, wine glasses in hand, laughing as though the house was theirs. David stood by the fireplace, the one his father had built stone by stone, raising a toast, to new beginning in our new home. The room erupted in cheers. Something inside me went cold. I opened the door. The laughter died instantly. Mom! David's smile faltered. We didn't expect you. I stepped inside, my eyes sweeping over the room. The furniture I polished, the photographs of my husband they had shoved into a box in the corner. Tessa set her glass down, her face tight. We were just keeping the place alive. Since you won't let go, my hand trembled, not from fear, but from fury. This villa, I said, voice ringing clear, it's mine, and you're trespassing. A hush fell over the room. David's jaw tightened. Mom, stop being dramatic. We're family. This house will be ours one way or another. You can't stop that. Oh, but I can. I pulled the folder from my bag and laid it on the table. Slowly, deliberately, I unfolded the living trust. This document ensures that this house remains in my name until the day I die. It cannot be transferred, sold, or claimed by anyone, not even my children, without my explicit consent. And as you can see, I haven't given it. The color drained from Tessa's face. You're bluffing. Am I? I slid the notarized pages across the table. The lawyer's seal gleamed under the chandelier light. David's hand shook as he flipped through them. His voice broke. This can't be real. It's very real, I said, calm and steady. I protected myself long before you ever thought of betraying me. Tessa slammed her palm on the table. This is ridiculous. You're old, Marjorie. You can't even manage this house. We'll take it to court. We'll prove you're not fit. I cut her off. Go ahead. And while you're at it, play these recordings for the judge. I pressed the recorder. David's voice filled the room. Relax, Mom. It's going to be ours anyway. You're old, Mom. Just sign. You'll thank us later. What kind of mother keeps everything for herself? Every cruel word echoed back at them, undeniable. David's face went pale. Tessa's hands clenched into fists. The friends in the room looked away, uncomfortable. Then came the knock at the door. 2 uniformed officers stepped in, tipped off by Mrs. Carter, who had wisely called. Ma'am, we received a report of unauthorized entry. Do you want to press charges? The room froze. All eyes turned to me. David stammered. Mom, please tell them it's fine. We're family. You wouldn't. I looked straight at him. My son, the boy I once cradled through fevers and nightmares, and then I said the hardest words of my life. Yes, they do not have permission to be here. I want them removed. The officers nodded. One turned to David. Sir, you need to leave. David's voice cracked. This is my house. No, I said firmly. It never was. and it never will be." The officers escorted them out. Tessa hissed as she passed me, her mask of sweetness shattered. "You'll regret this, old woman." I held her gaze. "No, Tessa." "You will." The next morning, the fallout began. Relatives called, shocked after hearing the news. Some pitied me, others whispered about David and Tessa's greed, but the most satisfying part was watching them try to explain themselves. David tried to spin it as concern for me. "She can't live alone, it's not safe." But the recordings said otherwise. Every lie he told was shredded by his own voice. Tessa avoided everyone. The shame clung to her like a shadow. And me? For the first time in years, I felt light. I wasn't done, though. With Mr. Harrison's guidance, I filed a restraining order. Any further unauthorized entry would mean legal consequences. When David received the notice, he stormed to my doorstep begging, "Mom, don't do this. We're family. I was desperate." I looked at him, my son who once believed I'd hand over my life's work without a fight. "You were greedy, David, and greed has consequences." He broke down, tears sliding down his face. "Please forgive me. Don't let this ruin us." My voice softened, but my resolve never wavered. "I will always love you as my son. But love doesn't mean surrender. If you want a relationship with me, it will never again be built on entitlement." His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked small. That night, I sat by the fireplace, the same one David had claimed as his own, and felt something I hadn't in years: pride. I had stood my ground. I had protected what was mine, and I had shown my children that betrayal, no matter how close to home, does not go unchallenged. But the final lesson wasn't for them. It was for me. The house was quiet again. Too quiet, perhaps. After the storm of betrayal and shouting, the silence felt almost foreign. I walked through the room slowly, running my hands along the walls, the banister, the photographs. Every inch of this place carried my history. The laughter of birthdays, the echo of my husband's voice, the nights I stayed awake caring for sick children. And now, after months of threats and cruelty, it was still mine. But more than that, I was still me. The days turned into weeks, and I noticed something shift inside me. For so long, I had defined myself by sacrifice, by silence, by the belief that being a mother meant giving until there was nothing left. But standing my ground had taught me something different. Love is not measured by surrender. Respect is not owed simply because of blood. It is earned through kindness, gratitude, and honor. And for the first time, I no longer felt guilty for protecting what was mine. Of course, not everything was easy. David avoided me for weeks, ashamed, perhaps resentful. Tessa pretended I didn't exist. And Elena, sweet Elena, she tried to bridge the gap, calling often, reminding me that not every child turns against their mother. One afternoon, Elena sat with me at the kitchen table, her hand over mine. "Mom, I'm sorry David treated you that way, but I'm proud of you. You didn't let him take advantage." Her words warmed me more than she knew, because for years I had doubted myself, wondered if standing up would make me the selfish mother they accused me of being. But hearing my daughter say she was proud reminded me, sometimes protecting yourself is the greatest lesson you can give your children. A month later, the community gathered for a small fundraiser at the local church. I went, hesitant at first, unsure how people would look at me. But instead of pity, I received knowing nods, quiet smiles. One woman, about my age, leaned in and whispered, "My son tried to take my house, too." I gave in. I wish I had your strength. Her words pierced my heart, because I realized this wasn't just my story. It was the story of countless women, mothers, grandmothers, widows, who had sacrificed everything only to be treated as obstacles in their own homes. That night, I sat by the fireplace and decided I would no longer hide my voice. With Mr. Harrison's help, I updated the trust to include not only my home, but also a clear legacy plan. One day the house would go to Elena, who had shown me nothing but love and respect, but until then it would remain mine, untouchable. And as I signed the final page, my hand steady, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. This wasn't just about bricks and wood, it was about dignity, about drawing a line no one could cross. Weeks later, David returned. He stood awkwardly on my porch, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. "Mom," he whispered, I'm sorry." I studied his face, the boy I once carried on my back, now a man undone by his own greed. "I forgive you," I said gently, "but forgiveness doesn't erase boundaries. If you want to be part of my life, it will be on terms of respect, not entitlement." His lips trembled, and for once he nodded without argument. I don't know if our relationship will ever be what it once was. But perhaps that's not the point. The point is, I no longer live in fear of losing myself. Sometimes at night, when the house is still, I imagine my husband sitting across from me, smiling. "You did it, Marjorie," I can almost hear him say. "You protected what we built. And you found your strength." And I smile back, knowing he would be proud. So here's what I've learned, and what I want you to take away if you're listening now. Respect isn't given by blood. It isn't guaranteed by the title of son or daughter. It is earned through love, gratitude, and honor. And if you are ever told that protecting yourself makes you selfish, remember my story. Remember that setting boundaries is not cruelty. It's survival. Because if I had surrendered, I would have lost not only my home, but myself. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have signed those papers? Or would you have stood your ground even against your own children? Share your thoughts in the comments. I know I'm not the only one who has faced family betrayal, and maybe your story will help someone else feel less alone. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to Twist Story for more tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and those twists that remind us justice always finds its way. Because here, in this community, no one has to suffer in silence. We speak, we remember, and we take back what's ours with dignity.